Where do I pick up? My. Internet unstable. Good morning. Welcome to mothers and welcome to Church Talk. This is a time that we've set aside not for preaching, not for teaching, but just conversation. We want to talk today about what's happening in the church. A lot of us have walked around with feelings and thoughts and ideas about what's going on, but we haven't just stopped and just shared what we see and what we feel. As ministers, we've come together so that we can share some of our ideas, but we'd like to hear from you as well. So we invite you to become a part of this conversation. This is something that we've been watching for some time now. Some of it before COVID, some during COVID, and some post-COVID. So we just want to share today. If you have some thoughts or questions you would like to share, feel free to enter it in the chat. These are ministers who have walked with you, who have served you in this community. You know who they are, but I'm going to pause for just a moment and allow them to introduce themselves. I'm excited about this qualified panel, this anointed panel, who will speak with us today concerning what's happening in the church. I'm going to start right here, and we'll just go to the end and introduce them and talk about who they are and how they serve in the church.
Well, my name is Christopher Cabanis, pastor of New Hope Church, as well as co-founder, president, and CEO of Heal the Hood, Empowering Movement. And I am not only pastor, visionary, but also community leader. And it gives me great honor to be able to share in this insightful dialogue. And so I want to just commend you for this particular vision for us to come together. I honor God for you and your life and what you have always meant to me. And so it cannot be denied that I am one of your favorites.
Yes, you certainly are.
So just want to commend you to establish this platform. And we realize that making it to Georgia in the world is even better because of Dr. Reverend Gail Tolbert-Smith. So I love you so much.
Thank you.
Amen. Amen.
All right, you all know this is my boy. That's been established. Moving on.
Thank you, Pastor Gail. And I'll piggyback on Pastor Cabinet's sentiments. Thank you again for doing this much needed conversation. I'm Shanita Smith. I serve as Director of Ministry Operations and Community Engagement at Mount Zion Baptist Church under the Pastor Paul Little, as well as the founder and CEO of the People's Advocacy Group. I'm also a local activist and organizer as well. So I'm looking forward to the conversation and dialogue and everything that we're going to discuss today.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Belvin Ware, also known as Minister B at Macedonia Baptist Church, where I am the youth minister and have been so ever since July of 2018. Along with being the youth minister over at Macedonia, I also work hand in hand with my brother, Pastor Cab, as the executive director of Heal the Hood Empowering Movement. And I just want to say what a blessing and what an honor it is to even be sitting on this panel with somebody as Dr. Gail T. Smith, who has been a trailblazer in our community. And what I didn't know is that we are sitting next to history, because it was her father that ordained her as a first woman ordained minister in their religious reformation. So what a blessing, what an honor it is to be here. Dr. Gail, I've had the honor and the privilege of preaching at your church for a youth service. Some of my family members go to your church, and you really can't talk about preaching, and you really can't talk about the church being the church, especially in Macon, Georgia, without mentioning Dr. Smith. So what an honor it is and a blessing to be here.
Wow. Well, thank you all so much. As you all can see, these are highly qualified people. They have the voice for this community and for this season in the church. Now, you all can tell I got a few years on them. So that's the other good thing. We have a little diversity going here in that we have different genders, and also we have these different age groups. So I'm excited to have this conversation. Church to me may look a little different than church to them because of our experience. But we want to bring that conversation to the table as well. I want to go ahead and begin with this first question. I have been watching something for some time. I would say for about 20 years. I've been looking at a shift in the church. So I'm going to just throw it out and ask, do you believe there's been a change in the church? If so, when did it happen? And what happened? How has the church changed? Whoever wants to start, just jump in.
So I bring a different perspective to that because my main priority, my main objective is young people. That's where most of my messages are catered to. That's my responsibility. So what I see is that there has been a shift from the church. The church in the book of Acts. I see that the church has taken a back seat to a lot of our social issues, in which it has caused the people of the church to turn their backs on the church because you're worried about me coming and you're worried about me paying my tithes and paying my and giving my offering, but what am I getting in return? And we do and don't get me wrong, we do a very good job at doing church. We do a very good job at singing hymns. Oh, here in Macon, Georgia, we got some of the best preachers who can hoop and who can tune up better than anybody. But what are we doing after the amen?
All right.
What are we doing when Sunday service and Wednesday Bible study is over with? Or do we really have a footprint in the community in which we serve? I know my sister's going to talk about it, and probably this would be a great way for me to segue into her response, because what she says and what I love about what she says is that programs don't save people, relationships do. And so we do well at having church. We do well at VBS. We do well at Bible study. But does the community know who you are and know what you can, or better yet, are you even providing anything for the community?
All right.
I'll piggyback on that and say that for me and from my standpoint, and I've had opportunity to see a whole lot of church because I served as almost like an executive pastor at my previous church, traveling around to assistant to my former pastor. So I've seen a lot of stuff. And the connection to the people who you serve, proximity, and having a relationship with those individuals and understanding the community in which God has placed you in, because I believe it's the cultural context of a community is how a church is serving. And so you've seen shifts and changes over the years, because in the 50s and 60s, you had the civil rights movement and the church being the educational hub and center where people came to get information, where people came to be empowered, to be able to address some of the social ills that are happening in a community. And I've seen a shift and a turn from that. So we're able to feed people, we're able to clothe people, we're able to provide financial assistance at times for individuals. But getting to the root of why those problems exist in the first beginning is not being addressed. We don't always have a voice at the table when we need to have a voice at the table, or we're not empowering individuals who God has given us stewardship that they can have a voice at the table, because we got a collective audience on Sunday morning or on Thursday, or as Belvin said, that the other outreach opportunities that you have, it has to be relevant.
Mhm.
And so keeping our relevancy, if I am using this as an example, we have a housing crisis in Macon-Bibb County.
Mhm.
But if we don't know that as pastors and leaders that there's a housing crisis, how am I addressing that in my teaching? It should have some type of relevancy when I come to the main place that should be the source. If we are serving the true and living God, and if I can't get the information that I need in this space, then how relevant am I? Those are the shifts and changes that I've seen.
All right, brother.
Even as we piggyback off of what Delvin and Shanita has shared, one of the things that has really burdened my heart is I think that the church has lost its ability to shift, to evolve. And I think that we have lost our way when it comes to theology, and it has become more meology, sheology, heology, that only edifies the ego of man. And so when we begin to think about theologies shifting as it relates to church, as we begin to look at the times in which we're living in, I think one of the things the church lacks is this ability to think, to be time conscious, to be sensitive of the times, not only just socially, but more so now, more than ever, spiritually. Because the Word of God does say that there's nothing new under the sun.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we look at a global view down to a local view, we will discover that the same things that plague Israel and the church throughout history is the same things that's plaguing us even now when we look at the political divides, the social divides. And Satan is using these means of political influences and agendas and social agendas, and all these things are dividing us versus bringing us together. And I think that the pandemic exposed the church for really who she is, and has opened our eyes to be able to understand the importance spiritually and even in the natural realm of how we should be able to engage God's agenda. And I think that in order for us to really establish a true answer to this question, is we got to establish who is the church, what is the church.
See, you getting me into trouble because you all kind of flags are going off inside. You're about to take me away from my conversation because you're about to pull me into this theological debate whether theology is evolving truths or timeless truths. So, but we can't go there, can we? But that ain't why we here. Yeah.
Wait a minute.
I mean, the preacher in me really wants to rise up right there. But let's so what I hear you all saying is the church has lost its grassroots approach to things. We are dealing more with the herd mentality, where we're more into touching the crowd and assembling the crowd than we are touching individuals and being able to address those individual conditions and concerns that are among us. Is that what I hear you all saying?
It's more or less like the church is okay with who's there, and they're not trying to catch any new fish. We're good with our tradition, but we don't want to evolve as the world is evolving. And we say we want the young people in, but then when the young people come, then we don't want to give them an environment that's conducive for them to grow spiritually, which is what Pastor Cal.
So is the church afraid of if we cast the net broad and deep, are we concerned about what we're going to catch? Is that part of the problem?
I think Mother is concerned about losing her tradition. And I think Bro Deep is concerned with the fact of erasing a charge to keep I have from the church.
But also to serve this president.
Yeah.
Come on, bro.
present.
Yeah.
And I would like to suggest this, that I found, and I've been in church all my life, but I found those persons who hold on to the traditions and those things that they've had as relation to their church and their position are individuals who only have relevance. They 30 years, they wasn't relevant.
Right.
But in the church,
Right.
you know,
That's
I
where
have
the
this
power is.
position, I have this power. My dad was chairman for 50 years.
My mama bought these pews.
Yeah, my mom bought these pews, but also I've discovered that the message doesn't change, but our methods should. And when we look at the YZ generation, or the younger generation outside of the X generation, which is our generation, I've discovered that that generation is all about a mission. They are about methods. And generating with all these church to find other methods. And so basically the young people, they are method driven, if you will, but in the church it's missing, from that standpoint.
Okay, so that kind of pushes us into the next question. So is the church still significant? Now, of course, you mentioned back in the 50s and 60s how the church really worked. Well, I guess the church has always been the center
Yes.
for Black people, because even when we were serving Massa, the
Yes.
church was the primary catalyst through which we were able to escape to freedom from slavery, and pass our messages when we would get together, when Master would allow us to get together. And if we move into civil rights, then of course, as you mentioned, it was the place, the hub for education, socialization. That's where the energy of the community was, in the church. Is it significant now? You're saying that young people are mission minded, but the church is not necessarily connected to the missions that the young people and the methods that the young people are interested in. I mean, you rarely hear the church talk about clean energy, but that's something that young people are concerned about.
Very.
So yeah, that is it still significant? I'm going to let you all respond, and I'm going to tell you what I think.
I think I want it to be always significant. I think it should be significant and it should be centered, because that's the place, that's where we come, that's where we gather. And I think going back to what Pastor Cabinet said, in this context, what do we see or view our definition of what the church is? But in this conversation, I would say the significance and impact and influence of its having a greater impact and an ability to influence has been waning. Now, I know we have because I think of it as the ecclesia, the body as a whole, because it's not his church and her church. We are representing the church, regardless of how we show up. And that's what we're being able to see. In this social media age, when COVID happened, and anybody and their mama can grab a camera and begin to talk and say that they are a preacher. And then you have those in those churches in those places that was not technologically savvy, and those members lost connection and they lost touch. But you got the whole world that's looking at social media, because we're all in the house. So that context of what church is and what it looks like and what it can be all got disrupted.
Yes.
It's all been disrupted now. So you and I were having a conversation, before we got started, about ways in which that we got to change the way we're thinking about we're doing church. So this could be church right here on Sunday morning in this context, and this could be a congregation that came because we got to be able to meet people where they are. That's the Paul was saying that I became all things to all people that I can win some. But if I can't let go of my tradition, if I can't let go of my significance, my individual significance, because I'm not going to do that. We haven't done that, and that's a desecration and all of that, because some of the things that we are saying is church and God is really just preference.
Correct.
It's not God in itself and what God is saying, how we should be moving in this context. And so people are dying. Blood is on the street. People are hungry. All of these things that Jesus was intentional about going out and being about his Father's business. So when we say, is it significant? It is in theory, but not in practice all the time. That's what I would say.
Okay, fair enough.
I would say yes, the church is significant. The church is just not significant to the people it needs to be significant to. The church is very significant because we need the church.
Yes.
But if the church is not meeting my need, bro Mike, and then if you telling me that Jesus says he's bread when I'm hungry and water when I'm thirsty, but then I come to the church and you can't even give me a ham sandwich, how do you expect me to believe that? How do you expect the church to be significant to me? If you say that I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, and then if I'm out here trying to get a job and I come to the church, but the church can't even help me put together a simple resume. The church can't even help me be interview ready. If you say I want to be a first-time homeowner, but the church don't even have any kind of resources to where you can walk me through that process, how do I get myself financially stable enough so that I can reach these goals that I have for myself socially? Because yes, we want to feed you, and if we say that if you come to this table, you will get everything that I need, but the only thing you're telling me is to give 10% and a seed faith offering, and then here it is, the church can't do nothing for me when I'm in need, then no, the church is not significant to me. And so if we're not significant to the people, then are we really being the body of Christ that God called us to be? Because as the body of Christ, we're supposed to be the hand, the feet, the eyes, and everything that Jesus would be. But so many times what we find is that churches, they drive in, they have their church services, and then after church service is over with, then they drive right back out. And they have no connection to the people in the local proximity of their church. And the question you have to ask yourself is that if you uproot your church from the community that it's in, will the people miss you?
All right. That's good. That's really good. Is it significant?
Well, is the church significant? The church should be significant. In some aspects, the church is significant. But my mind goes to God raising up Joseph. The question that I posed is, what made Egypt significant during the famine? It was its ability to plan, to strategically do a SWOT analysis, if you will. What made Egypt significant during the time of the famine was its ability to store up and be prepared. And so if the church continues to not be prepared, because we're living in perilous times, we may be post-COVID, but I have this philosophy that says we're going to be in a pandemic until the Lord returns.
Correct.
And what I mean by that is, are we stored up? I don't want us to lose our ability to not be sensitive to the times we're living in, simply because we're in the end times. And can the church handle another virus? Can the church handle a global blackout as it relates to technology? Can the world or our country handle a financial crisis that shuts down our economic system? Keep in mind, we're living in the last days. We are exposed to these things. Can we handle that? And if we're not prepared in these times, we won't be significant. because the times we're living in is inevitable. Everything that is happening is exposing us to where we are spiritually. There's a famine in the land. We have an issue with food scarcity, but also we have issues with the chemicals and the things that they're putting in these genetic designs that they're putting in the food that's killing us. It's exposing where we are spiritually.
Yeah.
There's a water crisis. It's exposing us where we are spiritually. There's a healthcare crisis. It's exposing us. And so that's the angle in which I approach it, even as they have shared. Are we significant enough where the people can come to us? Because remember, Egypt saved the whole world because of one man God raised up.
True.
So do we have enough Josephs who know they've been favored by God, or are they just about the theology versus the theology of God's will being done and established? So that's my approach. Are we significant enough in the times we're living?
All right. That's
And I would
good.
add to that, Pastor Gail, to say that I read an article in Forbes magazine that said in the next 10 years that 300 million people globally will be out of a job because of AI technology. That's in the next 10 years. As we were discussing before, 10 years ago, when I was in workforce development, we were talking about the gaps that were in skills and the technology that was coming, but we were slow creeping to do anything about it. And that was in academia and that was in other spaces, but that was never a conversation that I heard at church. Never about we need to get prepared. We need to make sure that you are paying attention to the technology that is coming. There was a robotic dog, security dog at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium that was securing the perimeter. A robotic dog that was being controlled by somebody at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. So if we're
Max
saying,
out of a job, Max out of a job, Bill.
so if that's just 10 years from now, 10 years, what are we doing? Because one thing that my brother Belvin has said is that we have a focus on youth. We have a focus on youth and young people and young adults. However, there are those of us that are in our 40s, our early 40s. What would be my case? Who's going to engage me? Who's going to help me? Because we have these gaps.
Right.
And that's being able to survey the cultural context of where that church has been planted. Because that's how we serve. That's how we stay significant, by having proximity to know what's happening in my community.
Yeah. All of this is good. All of this is good. And you all have your finger on the pulse of everything that is challenging the church. I'm just going to bring it front and center to who the church is. It's God. And it will always be significant because it's God.
It's His church.
It's His church.
It's His church.
And I think that's part of the message we failed to deliver.
Yes. Theology.
This is God. One of the things that shifted my whole concept of church was traveling to Africa.
Yes.
I had a pastor who I was working with in Kenya who was all about, I need you to come. And I took my team over, and we were so excited about being there. And he had talked about we're going to this church and that church, and every day there were different churches that we would go to. Most of the time, the church was a tree with a name on it. He was excited because he said, I found the church, Pastor Gail, I found the church. And he was establishing his church in this place. I want you to come to my church and pray in my church and da 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 da. We got to his church, and it was the foundation of a building that was no longer there. It was a slab, and that was his church. And what I came to understand was the church is his meeting place. And God has always wanted a place where he could meet with his people. And that's what it's about. That's at the heart of what we do. We are giving them a place where they meet with God. And that's what it's all about. It doesn't matter what kind of structure it is. He's always wanted a place for a corporate setting. I know I'm the church personally. I know my house is the temple of God. I got what I can do personally. But God has always wanted a corporate experience with his people. He wants a place where he can meet his people. And that's what the church is. Now, when we start talking about relevance and all that kind of stuff, that's the next part of it. And that's something that we have to address. The methods, the missions, all that has to be addressed. First and foremost, we have to deliver to them the message. This is God's meeting place. And that's why it's important. Now, how we get that point across, I don't know. I don't know all of it. And put all of it, because that method has shifted. Right. But we got to deliver that to them. Because here's my other question. Because they're so interested in methods and missions, they are turning to other organizations for that. They'll join alternative or authority because that's what they're about. And they're fully committed special events, they'll throw themselves into that. It ain't church, but it's mission. And because they are so connected to that, they'll do it. So, how can we give this message to them? There's a difference between I
think that it's simple. The message that God message, the message of the that
now with what you teaching and what you preaching, how do I apply that to my everyday life?
After I hear he got up.
Yeah. I mean, cause you
how does it apply?
You told me last Sunday that he got up, but I still can't pay my bills.
Yeah.
You told me last Sunday that he got up with all power in his hand, but I'm still dealing with this emotional and mental strain of life.
Yeah.
So how is it that I take what you're telling me and apply it to my life? And yes, Pastor Gail, we do sell a whole bunch of dreams. I remember just like it was, you know, when I was young, bro, Mike. You know what I'm saying? I would sell those dreams to try to get that number. I would sell those dreams, you know what I'm saying, to try to get that first date. You know what I mean? But then
Tell it all.
But then if you can't put up where if you can't put your words into action, then what good is it? So how is it do I take John 3:16 and apply it to my life? But because I ain't waiting for the by and by, bro, preacher. No, because David said that we will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living.
Come on.
So tell me what I'm gonna get right now. You know, to give me in the military when I was a recruiter, we called it the WIFM, the what's in it for me. What's in it for me right now? How can I apply this word to my life right now that's going to help me on this Christian journey and that's going to help me get through these low valleys? And how am I going to get through these dark moments? Because preacher, I hear you, but I need some practical application. And then can we push this thing a little bit further?
Push.
And preacher, if you ain't been through nothing, how can you tell me how to get through something?
Come on, push. Come on. We have.
But we don't want everybody to know all our secrets, bro, Mike. So we ain't transparent enough to tell somebody, oh, I used to be hooked on that same crack that you smoking. Or I used to be hooked on that same alcohol that you addicted to. Or I used to be that street woman walking the streets. I was the drug dealer. I was the pimp. But we don't want everybody to know that because then they're going to look at us a certain kind of way. But how they going to know if the word really works if we don't give them the evidence of the word working?
Come on. Come on.
And I'll add to that. Because that's this part right here. I'm going to try to do it without getting emotional. But it is what you said, Dr. Gail, about doing the right thing.
All right.
Okay? I got evidence of that.
Okay.
I ain't always know the Lord.
Oh.
So, but I would say this is that I didn't get saved in a church per se. I got saved because I was in suicidal depression in the 6th floor of the medical center. And I slit my wrist. And from being slit my wrist and sitting in that room in dark and saying, God, if you real, you got to do something for me right here, right now. And light flooded my room and it was dark in there. And there was a power and a presence that nobody can take that from me. That was an encounter.
Okay.
And not an experience. Because you know, I could have an experience at the Maverick concert, at the Maverick City thing. I could have an encounter at a Jill Scott concert. An experience, but an encounter with a true and living God that you're able to say not only what Belvin said, or this is where God brought me from, but this is where God is maintaining me now. This is what He's doing for me now. Because I don't get it right. I made some big mistakes, and I can own up to them. And with wisdom, I can share that. But the Bible says that we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the words of our testimony. And by this will all men know that we are His disciples, because we have loved one to another. And it's that genuine, authentic love that you're able to feel when you're having a conversation. You're looking them deep in their eyes and you're listening to what they're saying to you about what is happening in their life. The conduit that they can talk to that person's heart to transform and shift their life, that they can apply something. But the problem and the issue is sometimes we have learned as leaders, has given influence, is that I have learned where to shout at. I have learned where to put the colloquialism at. I have learned. So now I'm not a walking epistle that's read of men. That you can look at my life and you can look at my life and you can know that I'm transparent. I'm authentic. I love God with everything in me, that He could correct me and say, you need to pick up the phone and apologize. You need to do that. So there could be a genuineness and an authenticity that people can connect with, that they can have an encounter. We missing that. We missing that in the leaders that we have to follow. If we say right now in Macon Bibb County, who is that spiritual leader that we are going after and we want to to follow them because they taking this city somewhere, or the hand of God is upon their life, and we recognize it like Joseph was in place, as Pastor Kevin said. So it's up to us to make sure, number one, as the person that he has put in place, that I'm keeping my relationship right with him. Because if I be honest and I be transparent, I'm in a place with God right now where I'm talking to him like, what you doing? Like, and why are you doing this to me right now? But I know at the end of it, it's gonna be good. So I'm willing to endure it. I just preach a message for the joy that was set before him, that he endured the cross. So I gotta know that on the other side of this, it's some joy that's gonna come behind this. So that we're not talking about that. We're not bringing Jesus and making Jesus relevant right now to the situation that people are currently in, that they can come back behind and say, how can I get them steps? I need to know, how can I get them steps so I can have an answer for the hope that's on the inside of me, that it inspires somebody, it draws somebody. You know that it's life-giving, but when you go back in your own private little place and have a real conversation about that, because people have a false sense of what following God is because of the way we presented it.
Well, see, the sermon got to last beyond the benediction.
Yes.
And that's been the issue, that we can give it and bring it, and like you said, you know where the buttons are, you know when to push it, and bam, and then he's like, you know, we got that early Sunday morning. Yeah, we can give them that. Yeah. But what does resurrection power look like at my mailbox when I'm pulling that unexpected bill out? What does resurrection power look like when I see those 800 numbers coming through my cell phone? We got to get into what it looks like in real life. I can remember as a kid sitting in church. I was that kid. I was in church. I've been in church all my life, but didn't want to be. Folk made me go. And I didn't want to listen, but I couldn't help it. It was something in me that listened. And I never will forget this preacher in Macon preaching, spitting everywhere. He's able. And he kept saying, he's able. Yeah, I mean, he really drove it. And I'm thinking, what's that look like when we get home? And I think that's the connection. You know, even with sermon prep, I think it's important for every preacher to process what this message looks like at the house. Now, y'all know we have our methods for sermon prep. But do we get past the benediction is what's so important.
And that's really what my approach has been. Some people don't understand that in this life, you may not get all of the answers to your questions, solutions to your problems, but God is a God of insight.
Yes.
How does the sight of your heart, your inner man see? So when we go through certain things, as we follow this message of Christ, then we understand the importance of faith, and we try to find balance in that. But yet, when I go through certain things, like Shanita said, Lord, what is you doing in this?
Right.
But in this season, in this test, while Satan is tempting me, God is testing me. You know, what is it that you want me to see about me?
Yes.
You know, one of the things that I had to discover, you know, how we hear these sermons about haters and haters and haters. And the Lord convicted me because I've been carrying some issues as it relates to people who have done things to me and spitefully misused me. And I'm looking at them as my enemies. And so when you talk about beyond the pulpit, I'm teaching and preaching. But now I got to find out, okay, God, what are you trying to show me?
Exactly.
And the Lord showed me something so profound. And he said, well, Chris, you got to love those who persecute you, hate you, misuse you. And if you keep looking at those people and you only see them as your hater or your enemy, then you don't have enough love in your heart. Because when you look at them, you shouldn't see them as an enemy.
That's right.
You should see them as someone that you love. And so the question is, when we see people, if you keep seeing your enemies and you identify them as your enemies and your haters, then there's something in your heart. And so those are those convictional points, like you all are saying, that goes beyond the pulpit in the mailbox. You know what I'm saying? Because when I get home, I'm holding the pillow, and I'm in the fetal position.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? What is God? Who is God in this moment? And that's the profound struggle for all of us, if we be honest, especially as preachers and pastors.
And that's where we have to remind people, your nonprofit organization does not have that answer. The answer is in the house of God.
I'm done.
They do good work, but they don't have the answer to life. That comes from the presence of God. The presence of God. We got a question?
There was a question from my Facebook follower that said, can you discuss the needs of our single parents and what is the church?
The needs of single parents.
Yeah, Shanita, that's Shanita's question.
That's a biggie now.
That's your, hey, Shanita got it. She got it.
That's a tough one. As single mothers, especially, it's something that's near and dear to my heart. Many may know I had my first child when I was 15, and by the time I was 19, I had 4 sons. And so my parents both was addicted to crack cocaine, went through their illnesses and what have you. And I'm left in a space alone, per se. And so having those needs understood, first of all, because most of the time we will not admit, as a church, as a community, we look down on people and say, well, you had the first one now. You should have learned by the second. Now, by the third one now, you really should have got yourself in alignment. Now you got 4. So how is that perspective helping me to help myself? How is that helping me to change my life? And so for single moms, it's so many dynamics of it. You have the kids having to go to school. You have society telling you need to get a job. And most of us lost a big moment in the pandemic. We lost Auntie Joe, who you could trust to leave your kids with, that won't touch them.
Right.
That won't touch them. We lost a lot of dynamics in the pandemic. So daycare costing as much as a car note, house note for one child. For one child, and you add 3 or 4 and the resources. Well, go down to DFACS and just get some childcare. But did you know that DFACS has a waiting list with almost 60, 70 people on there for childcare? Well, I'm almost about to be homeless. They evicted me. Well, go down to EOC. EOC will help you get down to EOC. Well, baby, you're over the income limit. But they told me already, well, you got to wait till you lose your job. You got to wait till you lose your job in order for that to be able to assist you. So now I'm in a situation where I feel desperate, or I feel this and I feel that. It's the proximity. That's what I think we miss and we lack. It's the proximity without having judgment. I already made the mistakes. I already feel bad. I already know I should have did this. I should have got myself in this place, in this space. How is that helping me now? How can you help me with the practical steps of how I'm going to come out of this? For me personally, it was a lady at DFAC sitting in her office, and I was crying profusely because I didn't want to be in my situation. I didn't. And she stopped typing and turned around and just looked in my eyes and said, why are you crying so hard? I said, because I don't want to do this. I want to provide a good life for my boy. She said, it's going to be okay. You're going to get through this. It was something in her eyes, stopping what she's doing. Alicia McCrary, I don't know where she at, but she changed my life in that moment. I haven't seen her since then. I've looked for her because she changed my life in that moment. She had hope. And so we got to be and it's cliche, hope pushers.
Yes.
To be able to know where a single mom is, be able to not apply generalized stereotypes over people. Jesus didn't say to the woman at the well, this now look, how many husbands you gonna have, and how many this and how many that. But there's a context behind that.
Mhm.
We put our own westernized view on that situation and make her a loose woman, as my grandmama would say. When it's a whole other dynamic that goes around that situation, but that's what we hear. That's how we preach. And then from the standpoint as being a single mom who may be in desperate like situations and have men and influencers take advantage of my vulnerability. We don't talk about that enough in our position of influence and our position of authority, is that I taking advantage of your personal situation for my own personal needs. I got an agenda and I got a motive, but you're supposed to be a trusted voice.
Yeah.
You're supposed to be a person, and then you come in, you destroy me, you hurt me, you do all of this, and I'm left still with these boys. And mind you, I had 4 boys. So these are the boys that are running around here doing all kind of havoc, because it's this perpetual cycle that we don't stop, that we don't intervene, we don't have the right things in place to truly be the church and give people an encounter that they're not going to receive at the Salvation Army. They don't. Just knowing the processes that people have to go through, that I would rather just sleep in my car and have my kids and just put blankets up to the window, tell my kids to be quiet, and I got my kids parked in the back of the Burger King with the sheet up and tell them to be quiet and lay down. I'm gonna come back out here and check on y'all every so often, but this is how Mama gonna get us a new house. These are real scenarios. This is real life stuff. That's why I take it so serious, because I know God is the answer. I know Jesus is the answer, but it's what Pastor Kevin said. Jesus is the answer, but we got to be the strategists. That was the whole point of Christ being here. He was the executioner of God's vision on earth in that particular time, and we won't position ourselves right. So you have single moms, you got single dads, you got couples that are hurt, you got all kinds of things that are taking place, and we won't do exactly what you just said, Dr. Gail. I love what you said when you came over there and you preach for us, that we got this tension that's happening within the text, and we got this tension that's happening in between what we know about God and being able to execute it so people can get what they need through the encounter that they have with God through us, because it's not genuine and it's not authentic.
Amen. Yes, sir.
So how do you balance that word and the social issues that plagues the community at the same time?
It has to be, I'm sorry, Pastor Kevin. It has to be multifaceted. You have to be able to address the immediate need. People, if I come to you and me and my kids don't have anything to eat, this is in the book of James, we don't have anything to eat tonight. You can't tell me you're praying for me and tell me to go and leave here and go to the Salvation Army. First of all, you don't even know how much gas I got in my car. I'm already humiliated. I'm already ashamed. I got to be able to discern and ask the right questions. Sweetheart, do you have enough gas? You don't have to let me make a few calls. See what we can do. Then it comes, the next thing is that we have to be involved in the policies and decisions that are being made around assistance that's given to individuals. That's our money. That's our money. We think of it as government, but that's our money. That we need to have people sitting in places making decisions about what people's needs are. Most of the time, I've gotten the opportunity to be at the table when decisions are being made about my community. Is nobody sitting at the table that look like me or have experienced some of the things that I have experienced growing. There's nobody there, but you're making a decision about my life. So it has to be a both and, not an either or, because sometimes church can get tunnel vision. That ain't our place. We have no place in government. We over here making sure that people got something to eat and they got some clothes. But why do they need those things? Well, they just lazy. If they commit themselves to God, if they just be more diligent, if they be more, that's not true. There's systemic issues that face our community that needs to be addressed. So I need to be a Joseph or Daniel that's in the place Daniel never converted the king. That wasn't his role. His role was to be there and assign other people to be over different regions. But sometimes we get it all twisted. So that's what I.
Outside of what she just said, literally, I think that it's about building in government. We have enough programs. We have enough nonprofits. I'm not knocking nonprofits. I'm not knocking agencies that help to float. But when you really think about it, we have all the programs, a lot of things that are happening, but lives aren't being changed and transformed because of the lack of relationship. And so I think that the church uses the fish and the bread to introduce people to the bread of life.
Yeah.
That we got to be able to understand this is not just a one-time thing. We gave you your fish sandwich, and then we on to the next. It's all about building those relationships, to be able to walk in with them. And one of those they had to go through regeneration. They were as a nation. They came out of Egypt. But guess what? He took them to the wilderness as a means to build a relationship with them, so that he could speak to them, surrounded with his presence, to get Egypt out of them. And I think that the relationship component is key, which is why I love working with a Belvin. Ma'am, I'm about to get emotional because I when I think about just me staring death in the face, and then to know that I have more purpose and calling, and knowing on the backside of what God did in my life, just spiritually, mentally, emotionally, not only just physically, but then to get back to where I can live again, and then to connect with people like a Belvin, a Shanita, a Daniel Charles, a Gail Smith. I mean, I can go on, but working with these brothers and these sisters, it's about a relationship. And I know that's their heart. They want to have a relationship. We want to get out there. We want to be in the mix. Because a lot of times we don't seem touchable because we are in the church. And my greatest moments where I have meaning is not when I'm preaching. Like I would have preached 5-6 times in 8 days, 7 days. But it's okay. But me being able to go to Mercy and talk with boys 15, 17, and just be in the moment with them, and they share their fears and their issues, like that's what gives me meaning. Because that relationship I have with them now is something that's going to take them further in the next 5-10 years, because they have connected with me and I was adamant about that relationship. So it's all about relationships.
These churches to come into a relationship with one another so we can get out here and do the work and balance that word.
See, you're back to what Belvin started with, this grassroots thing, which is the way the church was promoted. The New Testament church was promoted through relationships. The transformational nature of the church was through relationships.
And can I just say this?
Yeah.
When you look at Acts, the Holy Spirit comes, church is born, it's up front, it's center. Peter is preaching. Notice the message he's preaching. But then notice they did not stay in the upper room. They left the upper room and met the people where they were. So when you talk about balance, there has to be spiritual and social balance. Knowing that I can be an Esther, I can be a Nehemiah, I can be a Daniel, I can be a Joseph, and not allow that social context to conform me, but know that I I could change the world from as a kingdom agent
Mm-hmm.
right here where I am and not be conformed.
That's
And
right.
so I believe that even as we continue to look at the times we're living in, people are back going to church, we brunching, we sipping, we got our brims on, we smoking our cigars, and all that's great. We spending time. But are we really prepared for the inevitable? And so I believe that we're ultimately on our way back to Acts of church in small groups.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are some pastors who had 10,000 seaters that regret the day
That's right.
they built 10,000
That's
seaters.
right.
And so
That's
I
right.
believe we're going back to small groups because it's all about relationships. So once again, how does church look?
God bringing Israel out of Egypt. Here we get this of God is revealed in the wilderness, the tabernacle.
That's right. You know what? Oh, you know what? Y'all ain't got no fans. Hold on.
Let me get you out of slavery so we can meet.
Y'all see how that thing just.
Yeah, but isn't that what Moses
Yes, it is.
told Pharaoh?
So they can worship.
So we can worship. So we can have corporate worship.
I'm done. I ain't talking no more.
So we can get together with God. That's always been his plan.
Yes, it is.
That we would get together with him. That's why the church can never be replaced. Never. Because there is no other institution where God promised
I'm done.
to meet us.
I'm done. Like, do y'all see how that just came back full circle?
No other place.
Do
I
y'all?
don't care how good the place is. I don't care what are they doing. There was one place where he said, I'll meet you there. That's the church. And that's the value of the church. His presence. It's the value. His transformational presence.
So in that, and I'll pose this question to you. So is it possible when you go back to we are the temple? It's a personal, it's an individual thing.
Mm-hmm.
So is it possible that we have made God homeless?
Shut up, boy.
I know it. Punch you right in the chest.
Start to slap.
Punch you right in the chest, Dr. Gail.
Yes.
So have we made God homeless? And he has nowhere to dwell. Because if he dwells in me, dwells in you, when we come in a corporate
Come
setting,
on.
those
Yes.
Hey.
man,
Yes.
I'm about to run.
Yes.
This conversation has come divinely full
Yes.
circle.
Yeah, and look at it. Look at how your power is diminished
We
in
ain't on the script
isolation.
now. I just want y'all to know.
I know you
We
can
ain't on this
worship at
script.
home.
We ain't on this script.
We ain't on the script. I know you can worship at home. But look at how your power is diminished at the house.
Which is what happened in the pandemic.
Yes. One of us can put 1,000 like the
Bedside Baptist, YouTube Baptist.
yeah.
I can go to 10 churches in 2 hours.
And don't give money to none of them. Go ahead.
Or I can catch 90-minute reels all day.
All day.
All day long. Just like this. 90-minute reels.
Yeah.
God.
That kind of
Oh my God.
Jesus did send it to say, right, we sent them 2 by 2.
Didn't send them by themselves.
Because there was more power.
More power when we're together. There's something supernatural. There's something happening right here.
Hey.
And he said,
That's what I'm saying.
You see what I'm saying? And something happened. And I know we got folk watching us on Facebook, and they might be getting something from it, but they ain't getting what we getting right now.
Yes, God.
Y'all hear what I'm saying?
No, this is real talk. I feel something happening in the spirit realm on how this divinely came full circle.
Yes.
like heaven and earth shall pass away.
Hey.
We can have all of these nonprofits, agencies,
Yes.
organizations, but there's one
They're doing
organism
good work.
doing great work. But will he know us? Will he really know us?
Yes, God.
Come on.
You know, we did all of these things in your name.
Oh,
And he's going to really look at us and say, but
I don't even know
I
you.
don't even know you.
Depart from me. Yes, sir.
It's like it's mind blowing thinking about it because so many scripture references come together and all deal with unity, like you said, for two or more
Gather together.
I am there with them.
Right.
Of course, we know he'll be with us alone, but his presence manifests more when we come together.
Exactly. And what did the Hebrew writer say? Don't forsake the assembling of yourselves together, as some folk do. You got people who think like that.
We're just mainly talking about the church building per se, just us meeting.
We got to get together.
So,
Now the building is important
right?
because that's the place we identified as the place where we're going to meet. And so that's why that's important. So I would never say the place is not important. It is important because God wants a house just like you do. So that means something. But the connection with God and each other is the value of the church. That's the real value.
It's no different than family.
Like
It's no different than mother, father.
that one big
Yeah. Right. It's no different than the family structure. Mother, father, son, daughter, sister, brother. Even when we look in Revelations, it's all about, from Genesis to Revelation, it's all about the family,
Exactly.
the family structure.
Mm-hmm.
And so now we got to ask the question, is it all just on the church? But is there really a great father in way?
Well, see, that's the other question. So what impacted the church? Was it the pandemic? Or are we in the end times with that great falling away? Because some of the folk at the house are preachers.
I know a few.
Yes.
They good.
It's some good old saints
They good at the house.
who used to could pray the house down.
Yeah.
Some of them are at the house.
Yeah.
And so it begs the question, what in the world?
It's both. I think it's both.
Can I share in this vein of what I've been wrestling with just in my own personal